Hi, I'm Robert Jones and welcome to the University of East Anglia, UEA, for our webinar for people who are interested in joining the brand leadership course here at UEA. Now, what's going on here today is really exciting because this is the last day of this term and the students are all preparing project presentations for client work, real client work that they've been doing all term. So you can perhaps get a little bit of a sense. Here's one of the projects in the background. I think we're going to have various interactive television things, film things maybe going on. We're going to see this for real in a couple of hours, so we'll find out what the students are up to. Here's a team doing, oh, they're waving, hello, hi, doing their sort of final last-minute preparation. The clients come in just 2 hours from now to look at these exhibitions that the students have put together, and then there are presentations as well. And then we have to mark them too, because they're all assessed towards the degree. Here's something really interesting going on for the clients in the publishing business. So just a bit of a sneak preview of what this year's students are up to in their real life projects. I'm now just wandering down the corridor into a room where I'm going to join my colleague Peter Schmidt-Hansen, whose name and face I'm sure you all have seen, and we're going to be here for half an hour or so to answer any questions that you might have, or just to talk in general about the brand leadership course. Peter and I are both just back from holidays. Peter, you've been to Tenerife, and I've been to Gozo, so you probably can't see it, but we're both very slightly tanned and ready for today, which is the end of this term, but then the next phase of the programme when students are working on dissertations. So Absolutely. It's a kind of big turning point today in the course.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually a really exciting time because, as Robert's probably told you, we've got our exhibitions today, but then also, as Robert's just mentioned, we're going on to dissertations. And that's a really great opportunity for the students to dig deeper into an area that they're really fascinated by. And one of the things that gets me every year is the diversity of the different dissertation topics that we get. You know, it might range from someone doing a bit of work on brand tribalism, looking at Harley Davidson, to looking at what it's like to set up a new brand in a developing country. We've had a very innovative project a few years ago on sensory branding. What it's like to be blind.
Yeah, that was a great topic.
Yeah. It was amazing, actually, and all credit to the student, because I advised them not to do it because I thought it was going to be too challenging. But the student said, "No, Peter, I want to do it," and you know, credit to the student. He did a fantastic piece of work setting up focus groups with blind people to find out what it's like to interact with brands. So really, really good piece of work. So it's such a diverse area, and very often these particular dissertation topics can actually be a springboard for careers in branding.
Yeah, people take their dissertations off to show potential employers, don't they? And you get a really good sense of the students' seriousness and commitment and knowledge from a dissertation.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we do is we look for three things, really. Broadly three things. One is knowledge, and they can express that. Another one is skill, and that's expressed through how they manage to collect the data and manage it. But the other one is effort, and when you look at the effort that some of the students put in on their dissertations, it's actually staggering.
It is. Of course, some of that effort happens right at the very last minute, doesn't it?
Yes, that's right. Yes.
This is kind of normal for students to do stuff at the last minute. But last year I remember being amazed. Two of my dissertation students did nearly all of their writing in the last week, and yet produced something fantastic.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's one of the ways in which people often work, that they might be thinking and incubating ideas. And I do it to a certain extent myself. But actually, you know, much of the thinking has been done beforehand, and it's only at the last minute that you actually come out with that really golden idea, which sums up everything you've been doing for 10 weeks or so, and then you're able to write it down. But it does mean that they are burning the candle at both ends for the last week or two. But the great news is that every year, once they hand in their dissertations at 3 o'clock on a Thursday, late in August, we have a little
There's
party.
a pizza. There's a pizza.
Yeah,
Pizza and beer. And
pizza, beer, drinks, and so on. And it's one of the most joyful days of the whole year from my point of view. Well, there's many joyful days, but the one where we first meet them at a restaurant in Norwich, and we all get to know each other. And then right at the end, about a year later, when we have pizza and drinks, when they hand in their dissertations, and it's just such a joy.
I mean, it's a social, it's an educational experience, but it's a social experience as well, isn't it? And it's every year we have 20 or so students. So it's a small group. People get to know each other really well over the course of a year working together, and they stay together.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's probably why we call it the brand family, because it does act like a family. I mean, they work together, they laugh together, they cry together, they eat together. It is joyful. I mean, and the size of the class you mentioned there, about 20. I mean, this year we've got 19, and our 19 students this year come from 12 different countries, which is absolutely amazing. And we've got this diversity, and of course that's one of the joys, because they bring their cultural perspectives into the classroom. And we learn what it's like to do branding in Vietnam or Russia or Hungary or Italy or Honduras or the USA. And it's all slightly different.
I think one of this year's dissertation topics is a student, I think, from China who wants to research storytelling among small cider brands in Britain.
Really?
So it's something kind of very British thing, cider.
Absolutely.
How is that going to look through the eyes of someone whose cultural background is very different? That's going to be, she will have a objectivity on this that could be extremely valuable.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, it can be really good. It's part of the course that I really enjoy as well. We have had a question. Actually, one of the students wants to know the applicants wants to know what the typical shape of the week is. And it's difficult to say what a typical week looks like, but very often it will be classes on the beginning of the week. So Monday, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, we have classes, but these are not sort of rather dull, boring, chalk and talk classes. I mean, Robert, I, and the other teachers on the program, we don't just stand there and talk. That would be just far too boring, and both Robert and I hate the sound of our own voices anyway. So what it is very active. So Robert in particular has been doing some work with what we call the flipped classroom, where students read beforehand, and the classes themselves are very, very dynamic. So typically, you'll have classes on Mondays, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, leaving Thursdays and Fridays not free, because that's when we do visits to brands and brand companies and brand agencies. But also on Thursdays and Fridays, you do a lot of project work, because there's not a week that goes by without you doing presentations. And I think that's a great opportunity, not only to embed your knowledge, but also to practice your presentation skills, your teamwork skills, your leadership skills. And I think very often that's what employers are looking for. They look for knowledge, but they're also looking for these soft skills, which are gained during the course of the working week.
I think one of the things that strikes us, Peter, every year is the increase in people's self-confidence over the course of a year, partly because everyone's forced to give presentations every week, that people who can be very unsure about speaking up at the start of the year are really confident by the end of the year, which is very important in the careers marketplace.
Yes, I mean, I think when students go for interview, very often it's competence-based interviewing. So the interviewers will say something like, give me an example of when you've been under pressure. Give me an example when you failed. And these classroom scenarios give plenty of opportunities to put forward good stories. Around that. It's interesting you mentioned careers, because we've also had a question about what careers might be available for students after they graduate from the brand leadership program. And without being sort of trite about it, but just about any sort of career, I think, is available. We've had some incredible stories from students who graduated from the program of going on to work within brands, within advertising, within data analysis even. Not only in their home countries, but very often here in London. And it's not one of the easiest things to do. If you're an overseas student, it's not always easy to get a job in London, but we've actually got some good examples of students from India, Bangladesh, Hong Kong, Canada, USA, Russia, working in London.
Yeah, yeah. And for top branding agencies in London, it's and great to see that. But also good to see people going back to their home countries and working in brand agencies or advertising agencies, or for big companies like L'Oreal, Procter and Gamble, I think, and just recently somebody started working for Luxottica, the eyewear company in Russia. So. Basically, everybody does seem to get a good job at the end of this course. A couple of people have set up their own businesses, which is really exciting to see. And a couple of people have actually gone on to further research. We have someone at Lancaster doing a PhD at the moment, and somebody else who's, I wrote a reference for last week, who's applied to do a PhD in Britain. So every possible kind of career, I think.
Absolutely, yes. They're really good opportunities, and as you say, some go on to research. We also had one student who went to do another master's at Oxford a few years ago, and he's now working at Google. And of course, that's one of the companies that we visit every year. I think we're already making plans to visit Google in July. So the students who are currently about to embark on their dissertations, they will present posters of their research at Google, where we invite a lot of the mentors, a lot of the brand family. We recruit people, we invite people who are recruiting to that event. So
I think the level of exposure to brand organisations on this course is quite unusual, isn't it? And the day we go to Google in July, we're also going to be taken behind the scenes at Burberry, which is not obviously fascinating business, but not an easy one to get into. So the people at Burberry really generously inviting us in to tell us some of how they manage their brand. And then next week in this very room, we have the brand director of Tesco, one of the world's biggest retailers here, talking about her career in the world of branding, and I'm sure a little bit about what's going on at Tesco as well. So that chance to kind of interact one-to-one really with organisations and leaders in the world of branding is pretty unusual.
I think also these opportunities are made available, but it's up to the individual students to make most of them.
Indeed.
I think one could come on this course and try and hide away. It's actually quite difficult because you're in the spotlight every time you're in the classroom, and I'm the academic advisor to all the students as well, so I meet the students on a regular basis. So there isn't really a hiding place in the classroom, but with these supplemental activities like the visits, like the master classes, it's very much up to the individual students to put themselves forward and to make those contacts, because it is all about contacts these days.
It's all about networking, isn't it? And we spend quite a bit of time with students actually teaching the principles of networking. We had a day, I think it was back in January, devoted to that subject, really, getting people to think about what's their own personal brand in the careers marketplace, and then how do they network. And we had a colleague of mine from Wolf Olins, Rose, who's sort of world-class face-to-face networker. She can go into any room of any bunch of people and start talking to people, something I still find difficult. But anyway, she has some very practical hints and tips for doing that, which she taught the students. Plus, in addition to face-to-face networking, there's online networking. And one of our alumni, who is an absolute genius on LinkedIn, came in and gave a kind of mini masterclass on online networking, and that said something I thought was really interesting, which is all the time that you spend on Facebook, spend it on LinkedIn instead. And he said at least 2 hours a day on LinkedIn. Sounds a lot to me, but I think that's right. At this stage in people's careers, you need to be spending that time in order to start building up those connections.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you talk about LinkedIn there, of course, and networking as well. One of the things that we've started this year is a new module on brand and digital and technology, and we've got one of the strongest experts in that area doing a session for the brand students on social media and how that's used both by individuals but also by companies and organizations. And that was a session that went down really, really well.
There's actually a couple of new modules this year, aren't there, which seem to have been very well received by the students. So digital and technology, obviously, really central to branding these days. But we're also doing a bit more on leadership as well.
Absolutely, yeah. We got three new modules this year. The digital one, which covers things like social media, obviously, but it also covers things like augmented reality. It covers things like big data and data mining and how you can make the most of that. So all of the things that, from a technology point of view, are beginning to affect brands. Things like wearable technology, for example, affecting brands in many ways. All of those aspects, they're now a core part of the curriculum. As you said, leadership is an important one, where we're formally teaching leadership, but we're also, as part of that program, helping the students develop their own personal brands and what they stand for. And when we talk about leadership, it's things like creativity. It's like presentation skills, it's communications, it's teamwork, it's problem solving, that sort of thing. And then the third module that we've developed is frontiers of branding, looking at the way in which branding can be applied to slightly more unusual situations. I mean, often when you talk to people about branding, their first thought is, it's about products, it's about services, it's about companies. But of course, there's a whole host of other things as well which are happening. And for example, the branding of charities. I think charities have probably come to the world of branding quite late compared to many others, but we do a session on branding of charities. One of our colleagues, Jonathan, who teaches on the program, he lived and worked for many years in China, so he does a good session on branding within China. So we're looking at the emerging markets as well and some of the challenges and problems that are happening there. So really quite an exciting mix of modules now.
I think that's right. We are on 17 minutes past the hour, so another 10 minutes to go. Any more questions?
Yeah, I had a question here about mentors, because that's one of the things which I think distinguishes our course from many of the others that are around, and that is the use of mentors. As well as an academic advisor, which for the brand leadership students is me, so on any day of the week where a student has a problem with anything to do with the university or academic work or studies, they can come and see me. But we also provide each student with a personal mentor who comes from the industry itself. Mostly these are people down in London. Many of them are working at a senior level. Many of them now are also alumni, so they've been through the pain and pleasure of doing the MSc a few years ago. And I think one of the great things about the mentors is that they can also act as a springboard, a guide, not only to careers, but also to how to manage this year when you're doing this MSc, which is quite demanding on your time. So I think that the mentors are often used in two ways. One, as advice for developing careers and networking, but also on a very specific level, when we set students assignments, which might be to look at the world of branding, what's happening in branding, the students can go and interview their mentors or use the mentors to find other people that they need to interview for their coursework or work for their dissertations. So the mentors are a really good resource, but again, I've got to put the emphasis here that it's up to the student to push that relationship.
Yes, though it's what you make of it, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And interestingly, what I find is that the mentors, who are often quite senior business people, get as much out of this as the students do. And I had an email from one of our mentors just before I went on holiday a week ago, saying that his mentoree had come in with one of the other students, spent an afternoon with him, and how refreshing it was for him to spend an afternoon with sort of young minds. And they were talking about the project they're about to present this afternoon, but he, then took the trouble to email me to say how rewarding it had been to spend that time. So it's great to see it has a two-way benefit, the mentoring.
Oh no, I think it really does. I think for many of the mentors, it's an opportunity for them to step outside their normal day of work and work with young minds. Young, dare one say, innocent minds.
Possibly.
Yeah, possibly. Yes. There's another question we've had, and that is to do with what happens now after a student has had an offer. We've obviously made quite a few offers already. We are still in the process of interviewing. I'm going to be interviewing a British student on Friday. I think you've got...
I've got an American student tomorrow, I think.
Yes, and I've got a Vietnamese one hopefully lined up for the week after next. So the applicants are still coming in, but one of the questions is what happens after an offer's been made? Well, I think the important thing from an applicant's point of view is to make sure that they keep in touch with us, really. We're here to help. I'm available very regularly. Robert is available. We also have administrative support here within the business school. So if there are any problems that a student has or any questions an applicant has after they've been made an offer, don't be shy about getting in touch. We want to help. So essentially what happens is that once an offer's been made, it's important, if you're coming from an overseas country, to make sure that your visa's in place to be able to come and study here in the UK. Make sure that the funding that you've got for your studies are in place. And if there are any needs in terms of accommodation or any other help that you need, just get in touch with us. And then we look forward to seeing the applicants late in September, where we have an induction week, which gives you a good opportunity to get to know not only the university, but also the beautiful city of Norwich, but also to get to know your fellow students, because as I said earlier, you will be working with them on a very intensive basis over the next 12 months after that.
But we'll be in touch over the
Yes,
summer with
yes.
everyone who has who we've made an offer to.
Yes.
And this year, for the first time, we're going to do something new, try something new, because we're always interested in trying something new, which is to give you a little project to do. So not hugely time consuming, but hopefully just a little bit challenging. A little mini project to do, which you'll then present back to everybody in the first week, or in the induction week in September. So watch out for that. You'll be getting a brief for a little project to do over the summer to kind of get things moving for the start of the course.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other questions I've had, and it's something we touched on very briefly earlier, was what are the visits like? Where do we actually go? And as you mentioned earlier, Google and Burberry are two of the companies that we're going to visit. These are obviously international, well-known, well-established brands, but we also mix it in with local brands as well, because branding doesn't just work on an international basis, it also works on a national and a local basis. So we will be visiting a wonderful local company called Adnams, who principal sort of area is manufacturing or brewing beer, but they also are involved in wines and spirits, but also the hotel business. And they run a really interesting brand because they believe that the brand not only works in terms of its relationship with customers, but also works internally in the company. So the whole personality of the way the company runs is dictated by this brand, which is open, which is friendly, which is innovative, which encourages ideas, which doesn't punish failure but learns from failure and things like that. So, and we also visit some local brands like Adnams. We also visit the wonderful local football team we've got here, Norwich City Football Club, otherwise known as the Canaries. So we visit them and see what it's like to brand a Premier League football team. And I've really got my fingers crossed that they are going to stay as a Premier League football team. We've got 5 matches to go, and it's looking a bit tight for them, but I'm sure they'll survive. So we visit those as well. And typically, as I said earlier, those visits take place on a Thursday or a Friday of the week. Sometimes they're very long days. If we're going down to London, we might have to set off at about 7 in the morning and get back at about 7 in the evening, but they're very enjoyable days.
Athens is interesting, you mentioned, because of the seriousness with which it takes ethical questions.
Yes.
It's very keen on environmental issues, and it's got a very green brewery, hasn't it? Which is really fascinating to see. But also, of course, alcohol does great things for people, but can be harmful as well. And they're very serious about the ethics of that. And I think over the few years that we've been running this course, the ethical dimension of branding seems to have become more and more important, and companies are under increasing scrutiny from consumers about the way they do business and the potential harm that their business might do. And I think hopefully we've taken that pretty seriously on this course from the beginning.
I think so. I mean, it's what we would probably call the tyranny of transparency. There's no hiding place now. Whenever you do something, whenever a business does something wrong or unethical, there's probably someone there with a mobile phone filming it, recording it, putting it online somewhere. So there's really no hiding place at all. So I think the sort of the ethical stance that brand takes is something that's got to pervade every aspect of the company from the bottom up, because there isn't this hiding place. And of course, social media works in a positive way as well, that if you do things well, if you do behave well, if you are innovative, if you do look after your employees, if you're good with your customers, if you provide great service, it's a great tool to get your message out there that you are a wonderful brand. I mean, I must admit, I do it myself, that if I encounter really good service with a brand, I tweet about it. Yeah. But equally, if I receive very poor service from a brand, it's not unknown that I will have tweeted about it. You know? And it's quite a powerful one.
Indeed. We've got just a couple more minutes, I think, left. I don't know whether there are any more questions coming in.
A quick check. I think we covered all of them. There was a question here about class size, but I think we've mentioned that already. It's typically about sort of 20. And I think one of the joys about that is that everyone knows everyone else. You're not an anonymous student on this.
No, absolutely not.
On this program.
So, Peter, I'm wondering if I can ask a question then. What's been the highlight of this year so far for you?
That's a difficult one because there are so many. I think it's not one particular highlight. It's just the joy of this year's class. Actually, I think every year the classes get better and better in terms of their diversity, in terms of their intellect, in terms of their creativity. I think it's just been one long, joyous ride so far. 6 months we've had them so far. Is it 6 months? It must be September. It must be seven months. Like that. Yeah. It's just really, really good. We've got such a diverse classroom. I mean, that has been one of the joys of this year.
I'd agree with that, and I think one of the great things about teaching is that you're always learning as well.
Absolutely.
And, I've learned a lot from this year's class. I remember there was one class where we were talking about the role of design in branding, where we just in the discussion formulated a little theory about to explain the role of design in branding, and those discoveries happening in the classroom are, I think, hopefully great for the students, but they're great for the teachers as well. It feels like we're creating knowledge as well as passing it on, which is it's a great thing to be part of, I think.
But I think also, you know, what if we're going to think about other highlights, it's just keeping in touch with the alumni as well, and that's the wonderful thing, is that they do feel like real friends and family almost, because you know, there's hardly a week goes by without 2 or 3 emails from some of the alumni sharing their success stories, whether they've got a new job, whether they're moving to a new country, or whether, like Anna, she's having a baby later this year. You know, and you know, it's all of those elements of friendship, I think, which I really enjoy. It makes my job easy and really enjoyable. It makes me want to come into UEA with a spring in my step, you know, rather than work being a downer.
Well, I hope everyone watching this will be coming into UEA with a spring in their step from September onwards. Thank you very much for watching. And if you do have any other questions, do please get in touch with us. We will be very, very happy to answer by email or phone or Skype, whatever works best. And we look forward to seeing you at the end of September.
Thank you very much.